Welcome to the show. This is your second episode, even though your first episode is going to be released later. But you're coming on now, or I want to have you on now, because I know you're doing this play, and I wanted to talk to you about being a filmmaker and going back to doing a play as a director. I know you started out in theater, and life goes in and out. And I was wondering if you could talk about being in the theater, how it's different from prepping for a film and producing a film and putting on a play, like live.
Yes, live and in person is very exciting right now. Just the idea of being with people, having people watching. So super excited. Very different in terms of just preparing myself, but also obviously thinking about a totally different set of problem solving for theater, right? So it's good to be back. It's good to be thinking about an imaginary space that has to be occupied by real people in real time and try to make that a place they can live in for an hour and feel like real people. So trying to keep it very simple. It's a very simple play and it's a very simple setup, and the stage itself has its own challenges in terms of being back to back with other productions, so we don't have lots of set design, but I think we've come up with some good interesting use of projection and lighting, and so I'm excited.
Yeah, and you don't have post to fall back on. That's my safety net. Well, post. That's not happening. But I think it's great. I think the use of projection is great. I mean, you're creating images to put up on the screen, which obviously you know all about how to do that. So that is amazing. And I wanted to talk to you about, so this play, you obviously directed this over Zoom originally. With some of the same cast members you mentioned to me, and I was wondering about what's making you stick with this play, right? Because you've already directed it, but now you're coming back to direct it again, and that's not something that tends to happen in film, obviously. So, how's that, and what keeps you with this particular piece?
It's a great point to think about in terms of the theater that we get to, hopefully, if you have a good relationship with the playwright and producers, come back and watch that play move to a bigger space and potentially a longer run. So yes, I'm kind of excited. This play is called Roommates by Kia T. Barbie. And I think what draws me back to it again is the fact that it's very much about real people, ordinary people with relationship challenges. I think that even though it is a queer romance, it's centered on a queer romance, it speaks to everyone's insecurities and questions about whether they're with the right person or should they be with that person, or is there someone better out there? So I think these are all questions we ask, and it's a gift to get to do this with an all-Black cast, and to not feel like we're pigeonholed in some story that is current or relevant, but is not necessarily the everybody experience. And it's that everybody experience that drew me back.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I read it. I had the pleasure of getting to read it. Ha ha, all of you who haven't gotten to read it, I got to read it. But I did get to read the play, and that's one of the things that did strike me. Often, I think it's great writing content, whether it's plays or films, about specific things that, can be relatable, but are really about that. But this is, yes, it is a queer love story, but it's everybody's regrets, everybody's relationships, everybody wondering years later, what did I do then? I should do now, because it spans all this time. And something that I really loved is at the beginning, I thought the boyfriend character we meet right at the beginning, I'm not spoiling anything for anyone, but we meet at the beginning. I thought he was going to go in a very cliche direction, and he didn't, which gives me hope for the world. I mean, seriously, I was so happy to see where he journeyed to, even though it's not his story at all, right? I mean, it's everybody's story, I guess, who's in there, but it's not around him. And it was nice to see that character evolve, even though some of his evolution's happening off screen. And that's really really kudos to the playwright for doing that. Do you want to talk about making time pass on a stage? Like, if people come to see this, right, what should they look for? Like, somebody who's trying to learn about how you can do these things, because obviously in a film, you know, maybe you're going to change, obviously you're going to change costumes, but you can't do a massive overhaul of people, and you can't do a massive overhaul of the space, and suddenly have different cars parked, you know, and things like that.
Yes. So this, that's been my challenge visually and conceptually, to think about what is the passage of time? How can we show that? How can we feel that on stage? Using these Polaroids from the period, using these projections from certain key, you know, figures in 1992, Janet Jackson, Madonna, you know, certain music cues are very important in this, to sort of show time passing in these women's lives. Also, the costumes have really come in to play, layering these different looks so they can do these quick changes and transformations. And I think really it's come down to a lighting palette that is allowing two spaces to exist at the same time, so that we're sometimes feeling like we're crossing time from one period to the next, and from one, you know, point of view of the character and the relationship to the other. So yeah, hopefully, you know, these things that have percolated in my head can be achieved.
I'm sure they can. I'm excited to see that. And also, I did want to talk about some of the actors that are in the project. I know, you know, there's some very experienced people, you know, equity members, not that being in a union is the only thing that makes you experienced. And then there's also people maybe who are a little greener, but are great discoveries, right? And I know you love discovering new talent, right?
Yes, and that's been actually the best part of this, is to really to audition new people, meet new people, and see, you know, start to see some folks that you want to work with down the line.